My name is Lisa. It's been almost a year since I married my husband, Robert. We live happily together in a small, affordable apartment, dreaming of moving into a new house. Robert's parents live just a 5-minute walk away, but they rarely visit us. Robert once said his mom doesn't want to interfere in our marriage, which is why she doesn't come over, even though we're close. I appreciated that about her, as many women worry about meddling mothers-in-law. But since I didn't have to worry, I felt relaxed about my family relationships. After a few years of work, we started talking about buying a house. During this time, my parents heard our plans and made us a generous offer. They said if we wanted to build a house, we could use some of their land. My parents aren't wealthy, but they had good land to give us thanks to my grandfather. He told them to pass it on to us so we could do whatever we wanted. When I told Robert about this, he was excited. He said we should take advantage of their offer and that he would be very grateful. So we began discussing what kind of house we wanted. We visited showrooms, checked out our boss's big mansion, and talked to real estate agents about new houses. Planning was fun. But one day, everything changed when Robert got a call from his mom. She somehow found out about our plans to build a new house and suggested we build a duplex so she could live with us. We were both shocked. We had never thought my mother-in-law would want to live so close to us. After a moment of silence, Robert gave a vague answer and tried to avoid the topic. This was understandable, since we hadn't planned on a duplex. We were hoping for a room for a future child, and if we made it a duplex, we would have to rethink everything. I worried that if we said no, it would hurt our relationship with my mother-in-law. We promised to have dinner at her place once a month, so we went to dinner. My mother-in-law brought up the duplex idea again. She asked if we had thought more about it and said she believed it was a good plan. She mentioned that they would help financially, and selling our apartment could give us a good amount of money. Plus, she said it would be convenient for when we have kids, because she could help us out. She quickly started listing the benefits of living in a duplex. I tried to speak up, but she kept going. While she had some good points, like getting help when we have a baby and the financial support, I felt that Robert and I could handle any challenges on our own. I thought it was better to rely on my own parents than risk being bullied by my mother-in-law. When she saw my worried face, she said, "Is it really that bad living with us? I thought you didn't hate us." She sounded sad, so I pretended not to hear her and quickly left her house. After that, she kept telling Robert every day about the duplex idea, which was starting to stress me out. I asked Robert what he wanted to do. Living together with our parents might be nice, but I didn't want to lose our alone time either. After thinking it over, we decided to say no to my mother-in-law's offer. We wanted to focus on our own time together, and we believed she would understand if we explained it well. When the day of our monthly family dinner came, we went to my mother-in-law's house to share our decision. But as we started to talk, she interrupted us. "Oh, about the duplex, we're moving forward with the plan." "What?" Before we could react, she added, "Mark is moving in too. He's a single dad, and it's tough for him. Let's help him out. Plus, it will be good practice for when you have your own kids, right?" We were so shocked by her words that we forgot what we had come to say. My mother-in-law took our silence as agreement and began planning the duplex, including ideas from my father-in-law and brother-in-law. We tried to tell our in-laws our decision several times, but they kept saying, "We're busy right now. Let's talk later." Meanwhile, the plans for the duplex moved ahead. Our in-laws were covering the construction costs, so we didn't have a big financial burden, but we were still going to live with them and my brother-in-law, who would need help with his child. Just thinking about it made me feel sad. Robert was no help either. He had given up and said, "There's nothing we can do to stop it now. Let's just give up." I also felt it was pointless to fight against the situation. We finalized the blueprint for the duplex and started choosing things like tiles and flooring. At this point, we should have secured the funds for the house, but the money my in-laws promised was missing. Robert called his mother to ask about the money, but she said something had come up and needed money right away. She asked if we could cover it and promised to pay us back in a month. We felt frustrated because even though they couldn't pay now, Their project was already moving forward, and we couldn't cancel it. Robert and I could barely afford it ourselves, but we didn't think we should have to. We were angry at my in-laws for being so selfish. "You act like it's just a small amount," Robert yelled at his mother. "She promised to pay it back in a month." "Has she ever lied to you?" Suddenly, my brother-in-law interrupted. Hearing this made Robert agree to wait for the money and start waiting for his mother's transfer. I decided to talk to my parents about it. The next day, I went to my parents' house and explained what was happening. I wondered if we could put the plans on hold. They said, "We were going to give you that land anyway, so if they promise to pay later, we'll cover the costs." "Really? Are you sure?" I asked. "Of course, dear. Your happiness is what matters to us. Don't give up on your dream house for the sake of your future children. Don't let this multi-family plan happen," they said. I was so grateful I almost cried. My mom smiled and added, "Plus, if they're always around, it'll be hard for me to visit. I want all the grandkids to myself." With my parents' help, the construction went ahead as planned, and finally, our dream home was finished. But a month later, we still hadn't received any money from my mother-in-law. Meanwhile, she started moving her things in before we could. It was strange, a duplex with no room for us. Since they didn't send the money, we didn't build a separate room for her, but she began moving her stuff into the room we had planned for our future children. To make matters worse, she invited her friends over for a housewarming party and started showing them around the house. "It's our dream duplex. It's a bit small, but we have a wonderful garden. We can even plant a vegetable garden, and once the veggies are ready, I'll share some with you," my mother-in-law said, as if they had built the house with their own money. Her friends, not knowing the situation, complimented the house before leaving. After they moved in and things settled down, 2 months passed, and we still hadn't received any money from my in-laws. Robert confronted them, but they kept saying, "Soon, very soon." However, 3 months and even half a year went by, and nothing changed. Then one day, my mother-in-law announced, "We decided not to sell our house. Instead, we'll have Mark and his kids live there," clearly stating she wouldn't pay us anything. I wasn't surprised, though. Robert and I often talked about how she probably never intended to pay. "Oh, I just noticed the house feels cramped when you both are living there. Can you move out? I have friends who sometimes want to stay over, and I want to be able to use the place freely. Doesn't that sound good?" she asked. Robert raised his voice slightly and said, "That's not the deal. Why should we leave our own house?" She replied, "Well, both of you are working and hardly ever at home, and since you don't have any kids, it shouldn't be a problem. Besides, Lisa's family is rich, right? You can afford to build a new house." I was shocked by her outrageous words, and Robert felt the same way. "First of all, you haven't paid any of the expenses like you promised. If you're not selling the house, then you never intended to pay from the start, right? What can I do? I decided to let Mark, who's a single father, live there. What's wrong with giving a house to my own son and his kids?" she snapped, getting more irritated. It seemed unlikely things would improve, so Robert and I decided to talk about it in our bedroom that night. "If this keeps going on, my mother and her family will definitely try to kick us out and take over the house," I said. "Yeah, I suppose so," Robert replied. From the next day on, my mother-in-law continued her attacks, making nasty comments and harassing me. "If you don't want to be bullied as a daughter-in-law, you better move out quickly." I thought I wouldn't have to deal with mother-in-law and daughter-in-law problems, but experiencing them firsthand turned out to be more troublesome than I imagined. When we were living in that small room, we barely interacted with my mother-in-law. Maybe it was foolish of me not to see how things would turn out. However, since I believe in giving back as good as I get, I decided to make a plan. A month later, my husband, his parents, his grandfather, and I came up with a plan. My husband told my mother-in-law, "We're moving out. You can invite your friends over whenever you want. You'll be happier that way." The moment she heard this, her face lit up with joy. We decided to move to a newly built apartment we had been looking at, which reminded us of our newlywed days. We returned to renting, and it felt peaceful, just like when we were first married. A week later, the phone rang. I overheard my husband say, "I see, that's great. Bye." I was sure our plan had worked. The day after we made our plan with my parents and grandfather, We put our house up for sale and found a buyer who wanted us to move out in 3 weeks. While my mother-in-law was away, we let acquaintances and colleagues come to see the house. Today's phone call was about the family who decided to buy it. We arranged for 2 large trucks and had the movers quickly load our belongings and furniture. We carefully timed everything for when my in-laws said they were going to a theme park in New York over the weekend with their grandsons. They mentioned they would stay overnight, which was our chance. Everything went smoothly. The professional movers packed for us, and it was done much faster than we expected. We waited in front of the house for my in-laws to return. When they arrived in the evening, they seemed tense, sensing something was off. My mother-in-law, looking anxious, entered the house and screamed, "What is this? What happened? Where are all our things?" My father-in-law was also making a fuss. Robert and I calmly watched them from outside, and when they came out, we revealed the truth. Robert said, "Everything is loaded on these trucks. The destination is noted on a piece of paper stuck to the trucks, so please go there. It might be a bit small, but it's enough for the 2 of you to live in. It might get cramped if you invite friends over. Also, this house has already been sold. It's someone else's property now. Take care." My in-laws were shocked. "What do you mean you put it up for sale? It was our house. You can't just sell our house." I responded, "The property is in Lisa's parents' name, but the house is in our name. We are the owners, so we have the right to sell it. You should be ashamed to call it your house when you haven't paid a single dollar for it." Robert's unexpected words made my in-laws fall silent. Before we left, he said, "We've taken care of things until now, but you'll have to unload everything yourselves. You can afford that, can't you?" They replied, "We don't have that kind of money." Robert continued, "I know you must have some money. You've been selling things you took from Lisa and depositing the money in your bank account." "How did you know that?" they asked. "Does it matter? Oh, and you don't have to pay us back. Consider it severance pay. Use it however you like. Now we'll be off. I doubt we'll meet again." With that, Robert declared severance to his parents, took my hand, and we hurried home. We called our parents and grandparents to share the news of our successful plan, and they were very happy for us. My grandfather, knowing we were going to live in an apartment, said, "Actually, I still have some land left. I'll give it to you too, and I'll cover half the costs so you can build a new house." And that's exactly what we did. Half a year later, we completed our dream of building a brand new single-family home. It was a bit farther from the city center, but the air was fresh, the neighbors were kind, and we were very happy. As for my in-laws, we didn't know if they went to the address we provided. They contacted my parents for financial help and asked Robert's brother, who was planning to remarry next year, if they could live with him. He flatly refused because his new wife also wanted to move in. My parents decisively turned them down and told them not to involve our family anymore. Robert apologized to my parents for his terrible parents, but they said, "From now on, we're your real parents. Feel free to rely on us as much as you want." Thinking about future problems, my parents recommended we install a home security system. We could rest easy knowing they would turn away Robert's parents if they ever showed up. We also got a small, cute puppy as a guard dog in our yard, and I highly doubted his parents would have the guts to intrude. From now on, we wouldn't have to deal with Robert's parents at all. It was the beginning of a new life for the 2 of us. We planned to have children in a few years and build a happy family. We promised each other we wouldn't let anyone disturb our happiness.